the thing. So maybe 2 years ago, I realized that her name was Jeannie Han, ex-head of corporate strategy at Paramount, was leaving to go run Line's U.S. operations. At that point, I realized it's going to be a big content play that we're probably going to be making. And we just saw Q2 of this year, 50% of their $100 million earnings were all from games and content that they're bringing aggressively onto the platform. So it's gone beyond stickers, emojis, to actually more interactive entertainment now.
Do you guys see, I mean, we're talking about messenger apps, that kind of thing. I mean, one of the biggest challenges of game development, I mean, obviously making a great game, a new idea, something fun to play, but it's distribution. And finding your way on, in the Apple Store, or Android, or Amazon, or whatever, it's a really tough deal with so many games and apps out there. Do you guys see anything coming that will become a new distribution platform that people should be looking at early?
I think I touched upon it. I think wearables, there's going to be separate app stores and stuff that come attached to different wearables in the future. I'd be surprised if that's not currently in the works, and it's not something we hear about with the big marketing push that accompanies the device launch.
Yeah, the China situation is very unique. That first of all, there are probably 300-400 different kind of almost you call the portals, where you can do distributions. However, probably I would say 80% of traffic are concentrated in top 3, the major like Tencent, like City, Baidu, those kind of people. So on this limited gap, because once you have the traffic come to this only few places, and on each places you can only have a limited game there. So that's a very, very competitive situation. Even you have lots of games, contents available. So that's very interesting situation, different than here.
I think to build on that, there's another opportunity out there. If you talk to the large Chinese app stores, large Chinese mobile and online companies, both games and otherwise, they seem to have a general strategy in common right now, which is trying to find great IP from the West that can actually work in the Chinese market. And they are actively going through all the markets of the world, talking to every developer they can who they think is great to bring the content in. That's the first thing. Second thing is many of them are now looking to globalize. It's a push from the government as well as from the companies to try and go out. So if you can help them in that way, there's a lot of opportunity because from an economic perspective, the Chinese, Japanese and South Korean companies are so much stronger than their counterparts in the West.
That's a very true point, which I hope that the kind of message I can deliver to the audience here, meaning that I personally, when I'm in China, I feel those people, the game publishers or even game, they're so hungry for Western-made games. And interesting now, the game is such international. Almost every hot game here, the people there they know immediately. So therefore, I think this everybody knows it's a great market there. But certainly there's a trick there, meaning again at very high level you look at this huge market with great distribution, game publishing opportunities there. But then you get closer, you put your feet on the ground, then you start to hit lots of roadblocks there, and also the tricky things happening, which hopefully this panel may not have enough time to talk about that. But that's
so Raymond, that sounds like a pitch. That you need me to get to China, which is good. I like that. Yeah. So my question to you is, 8 out of 10, this comes from Tim's data, but of the largest M&A transactions through the third quarter have been driven through either Japan, China, or South Korea, and everybody here is aware of that. But that's a huge number, 8 out of 10. And I guess my question would be, is that just an anomaly? Or is that something that we should look for in the future, that Asia will be the drivers and the consolidators of this business, this industry?
That's the genesis of the data.
Well, basically, both last year and for the first 3 quarters of this year, 8 of the top 10 acquisitions have been from Chinese, Japanese, and South Korean acquirers. Our views on what's driving that are a few things. The first thing is scale. Without being pejorative, there aren't enough people in America. So if you're looking at a market where you're predominantly free to play, and therefore you need to get to very high volumes, China obviously has a huge advantage. The depth of the Japanese and South Korean markets in terms of monetization give them a huge advantage because the sort of monetization strategies that work here in the West. In China, Japan, South Korea, you get monetization happening so much faster in any game you have to use compared to here. So the much better the science of making money. What that translates to is more revenue, much higher profitability, high growth rates. And just a quick point on the IPO markets as well. People are being very excited about potential IPOs in the West. I'll show you, hands in the audience. How many people here know about the last 2 IPOs in the games market in the last month in China? Anybody? 4Game, IGG, 2 IPOs. Nobody has heard of them. That's just part of the huge consolidation and growth wave coming out of that market.
Yeah, they're also not they don't have a legacy business. They don't have an old console business. They went to online first. They went to mobile adoption much earlier. They invented the free-to-play model. So in some ways, it's the innovator's dilemma all over. Since you are not invested in these old parts of the gaming industry, you can focus on all the new parts. And then, of course, it's 5.5 billion people, so it also represents the largest chunk of the world's population. So those 2 trends are basically coming together, and I don't think we should expect anything to change. I think it's only getting more dominant.
Also, you mentioned earlier that,
and if I could just follow up a little bit there, you just brought up 2 points. Raymond and I were talking earlier, and it's not just scale in China. There are other things there that make China a player here, and I think you just hit on one of them, and that is they don't have to deal with the old consoles and whatever else. They're dealing with all the new businesses, and I'd love to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, so that will also actually, they don't have to deal with the old stuff, which means all the creativity is going into new endeavors. Years ago when piracy for any other media content was rampant, you had all the creative minds going into free-to-play and gaming because it's hard to pirate, and so it's innovative, it's new, and so we should expect much more of that. And by the way, we should also then expect much more innovation from other parts of the world that don't have legacy. There's a friend of mine here in the audience that built a mobile gaming business in Jordan. And, they also don't have any kind of legacy, right? So you can actually, more if you're here, so you can build, great new businesses everywhere. And Asia, has the advantage of the extra scale, of course.
One thing I want to say that, given these sort of a particular culture pattern or reason, as we all know notoriously that the Chinese people do not want to pay for software, they don't want to pay for a game. So therefore, that's the born creation of this called the free play, and also more in these virtual goods. I think those things, I would think that can be borrowed and learned by the Western world, because in that way, actually you see the opportunity. So for example, where do you put that kind of particular point that when you play a certain point, say, sorry, you got to pay to play next level, or you got to play to buy a weapon or buy virtual goods. That's, I think, Chinese game developer has pushed that to kind of a limit. That if it can be learned on this side, there's more money can be made, or that's another thing. Sorry, I have one more thing. Back to your previous question about the innovation and consolidation. Because the world, I see the trends more moving to the mobile games, which is a very low barrier to make, meaning there's 3, 4, 5 smart guys coming from anywhere or nowhere can make the next big crazy birds or whatever. So therefore, the larger corporation actually facing the challenge because they're harder for them to make a newer one because people can easily quit their job when they have that kind of idea. They create one. So that's kind of true.
2 quick responses to that. I actually think so. Categories like mobile mid-core, I think that we're really interested in out here in the West from the venture community at least. That's going to take a little bit of longer time before that's not going to disrupt the free-to-play market on PC gaming in Southeast Asia. It's just not going to happen. As you see rising penetration of tablets and faster streaming infrastructure, et cetera, you will see a rise of those kinds of games like League of Legends on the tablet, for example. I think that's one thing. The other thing that I was going to talk about from a path to liquidity perspective as an investor, I think that right now you've got folks that we just announced a portfolio company today that got funding from Nexon. So Nexon's been very interested in doing deals out here recently. But whether it's Nexon, Gung Ho, or IPOs in Europe like King that's going to issue some liquidity and return to investors, I think that you can't. That's not going to be indefinite. The gaming markets heat up, as I'm sure Tim can attest to. When they cool down, they heat up, they cool down. So
I take the opposite view around mobile specifically. You've got to think about the underlying growth drivers. So okay, it's a 15 billion market. Last year, it'll be a 70 billion market within 3.5 years. That's a pretty fundamental growth. And the profitability in that market is also quite fundamental. So I don't think, in terms of what's happening around mobile, it's a short-term bubble. There are some bubbly transactions, no question. But in terms of the actual overall path, I think it's pretty solid in terms of the underlying economics.
It will take one calamitous IPO, similar to the one that Sean named in here.
Actually, in relation to the IPO market, in games specifically, it goes through 2-year cycles because you get those calamitous ones, and every couple of years the market comes back, and it's just happening again. So you'll get dips and troughs, but that overall growth path, that's there.
Okay, and we are out, we're actually not out of time, we have 6 seconds, but I'm going to ask this really, really quickly. My question will probably be longer than your answers, but I think people would be interested, I certainly am. If you had a favorite niece or nephew, if you had a son or daughter, if you had, and you guys have already heard this, but if you had to direct someone and wanted to go find success in our ecosystem, where would you point them? Geographically, platform, whatever, just a quick answer.
Well, since, I'm from the industry, I would say that any skill that is incredibly transferable. So if you're a great artist, a great engineer, a great designer, it really doesn't matter. Right now, probably you would want to start in mobile.
Lars, I told you that was not going to be a good answer. You got to pick.
No conditions. Yeah.
No, I mean, the one thing that will never change is that this industry changes faster and faster. So that's why you pick something that is transferable, that you can use in 2 years or 3 years, because it won't be mobile games, then it will be something else.
It was a very political answer, but
As an investor, institution investor, I would put money into the game ecosystem, wherever the components. As my angel investor, I put money into the game developer studio with good people.
okay.
If it's a family member of mine that's looking at their career going forward, I would say go become an iOS or Android developer from the best place that you possibly can. If that happens to apply to games now, great. Otherwise, you'll always be able to find a good background to leap forward from.
One of the ways we think about this is between games or apps that are device intensive, and most of the value is on your phone or tablet, or cloud intensive, or basically most of the value is actually cloud somewhere. Most of the games models, apps models, are actually currently around device intensive. The SaaS models around cloud are where we see some of the big opportunities going forward, and in games, that's hardly been tapped. So go there.
Okay. We are out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you. And please find out